For the most part since 2026, my Sony a7 II has been my main camera for most of my food photography shoots. It's incredible for its time and it served me really well. But recently, my clients have been printing out my work up into larger canvases such as this one. And I've been able to notice the slight drop in quality because I tend to crop a little in my photos. Issue number 2 is that I've been using my a6400 for my B camera for quite some time now, and I've noticed that because my A camera is my Sony ZV-E1 and has 10-bit 4:2, there's been a little inconsistency in terms of editing. And you guys probably know that I edit my skin tones quite a little, such as this. I've been searching high and low for the perfect camera to meet these two demands that I have. And after a ton of research and mindless scrolling, I found it. This is the Sony a7C II. In this video, I'll be showing you guys my thought process on why I choose the Sony a7C II to hopefully help those who are on the fence on this camera to make a definite decision. Before we begin, just some light disclaimer. This video is obviously not sponsored by Sony, and I bought this camera with my own money after selling out my Sony a6400 with the Sigma lens. It's a little heart pain, to be honest, but I needed the upgrade. Secondly, I also made a video talking about the Sony ZV-E1. This is by no means replacing my main camera. This is going to be a secondary support camera for my Sony ZV-E1. And I've done 5 reasons to get that. Will there be differences in their footages? I highly doubt so. This is meant to be a hybrid camera, not a video specialized compared to the Sony ZV-E1. With that said, let's jump right in. The a7C II is the lightest hybrid full-frame camera in the Sony lineup. How this camera came to be is they took most of the features of the Sony a7 IV and squeezed it down to this smaller form factor, particularly removing the larger viewfinder at the center. If you go to websites such as cameradecision.com, you'll be able to see all its features over there, which are nearly 90% similar. Going deeper into its photo capabilities, this camera has a 33 megapixel BSI CMOS sensor. It still has a viewfinder right at the side over here, as well as all the dials and buttons which are really important for things like shutter speed, aperture and ISO. Something that my Sony ZV-E1 doesn't have. Moving on to its video capabilities, this has the ability to record 10-bit 422, which is much larger than the usual 8-bit. We are comparing about 1.6 million colors against a billion colors. Sorry, 16 million colors against a billion colors. Most of the time I'm actually editing this in Premiere Pro and I use LUTs over my video footages, so it needs a lot of data to work with, especially in the skin tone areas. Which it being at such high dynamic range really helps in the editing process. Above that, this camera has the very same features which I love about the Sony ZV-E1, which is its recording border. So if we go to, you can see the screen over here, focus on it. So if I'm ever recording, there will be this red border which appears. This little red border. This is really helpful when I'm recording videos, because I can't tell you how many times when I was recording with my previous camera, such as the a6400, I didn't know it was actually recording. With that said, this camera has a 7-stop IBIS, which basically stabilizes a lot of the lens out there and gives you much smoother images and footages. One thing good about Sony cameras is that they aren't selfish. You're able to adapt other brand lenses on top of this camera and the IBIS still works for it. Next is its aesthetics. Now this silver and black combination is really unique to only some of the lineups in Sony systems. Most of my Sony cameras out there are actually all in black, so it's quite hard to tell them apart. And I'm sure this also gives a very unique vintage touch to it. I recently ordered a few accessories and I'll be showing you guys in another video. Now I'm sure some of you guys have some concerns out there, like I heard that this camera's grip isn't that good, or it does not feel very well balanced. So let's address it under this section which I called things that matter and things which did not. Number 1 is the imbalance in weight. Now this camera is pretty light. It comes in at only about 500 grams, which is lighter than most Sony cameras out there. And some lenses are even heavier than the camera body itself. So let's take for example this little Carl Zeiss 16-35. Now this is my go-to wide angle lens, and this weighs nearly about 600 grams, or in the upper 500. So it's slightly heavier than this camera body. So let's just mount it. Okay, I know I'm not supposed to do this. In case you guys are removing camera lenses, I've been told to always face it downwards outdoors. But as you are indoors, there aren't a lot of dust flying, but just a good practice that you should do. So I'm really quite surprised that even though this lens is heavier than the body, when I'm holding it, it does not feel very lopsided. It feels okay and well balanced. Somehow, when I was getting this camera, I thought that putting up this lens would actually make the camera always go downwards. But in terms of how it's built, and because the grip is and the thickness of this camera is quite appropriate, it feels really okay. Now, you might be thinking, of course, this isn't the wider lenses or longer lenses such as the 70 to 200mm. But in all fairness, if you're actually getting this camera, you're getting it because of its light and small profile. Number 2 is that it's only one camera card slot. At the side, you can see there's only one camera card slot. Now, I don't know why this is such a big issue for the professional photographers out there. Because for me, I've never had the need to have 2 camera card slots. Because the truth is, no camera cards ever fit on me. I've used SanDisk and I've used Lexa. By the way, this term is called redundancy shooting, which I've recently learned about this term. But with that said, I have not used other brand of SD cards out there. So I can't vouch that all SD cards out there are as reliable as these 2 brands which I use. Last but not least, is the tiny viewfinder. Now if you can take a look at this viewfinder, it's by no means small. It feels really nice when you're holding up to it this way. It's a huge improvement from the A6400's viewfinder because of the extrusion that it allows. Now, and if you are always someone who always use the viewfinder, I'll suggest to get eye cups such as this to enhance its ergonomics. So, what are the things that matter or that's affected me in terms of its design? There's only one. At the back, you're able to see that there is no multi-selector. There's this huge AF button over here, which is really comfortable to press. But I did prefer a AF joystick, or also known as a multi-selector, instead of this huge button. It allows me to be able to select the focus point in my camera footages. Now, I personally do not know why Sony did this. The fact that this button is so huge was really meant for having this multi-selector. But I guess they just did not want to cannibalize their other camera lineups, which I feel is ridiculous. So, to wrap things all up, I do really love this camera and has not an ounce of regret. It is really so much lighter than my other cameras and it's really more fun to bring it out. Having 33 megapixels gives me about 50% more megapixels than my previous camera, which is important for my shoots, especially when I'm cropping in my footages. I'm pretty sure this A7C II will be good for at least the next 10 years in terms of technology wise. So if you're on the fence on getting this camera, I would say just go for it. You will not regret it. I'm sure some of you guys also noticed that I did not feature the kit lens of the A7C II. Now that's because I did not get it. I've saw a lot of reviews online about how the camera lens tends to hunt in video. And as you guys know, I plan to use this as my B camera for my YouTube. And if I ever to zoom in, I want to avoid this little hunting effect. So, what do you guys think about this camera model? Or are there other Sony camera models that you are looking at? Or other brands, such as the new Canon 50V vlogging camera? I'm curious, let me know down in the comments below. Recently, some of you guys joined my YouTube membership and even give me super thanks, which I really appreciated. It's a small way for you guys to show that you enjoy and find value in my content. With more support, I'm definitely be able to do much more. See you guys in the next video.